Okay, so picture this. Dimly lit rooms, whispers, maybe even a ritual or two. It's easy to get caught up in the mysteries surrounding groups like the Ordo Templi Orientis.
The O.T.O.
Right, the O.T.O, exactly.
Yeah.
But you, our amazing listener, you're not about all that speculation. You sent us this really interesting document, a handbook from 1996 for O.T.O leaders here in the U.S., and you want answers. You want to peel back the layers and understand what this organization is actually all about.
Yeah.
So that's what we're doing today.
It's a deep dive then.
It is a deep dive. No conspiracy theories, no robes or anything, just...
Well, the robes might come later. We'll see.
We'll see. But we're just diving into this document to see what it reveals.
It's a fascinating document, really. It's like a snapshot of the organization from 1996.
Right.
Reads like an internal rule book.
Yeah.
It's got everything from their organizational structure to like the, expected conduct of members.
Okay, so where do we even start with something like this?
Well, I think a good place to start would be the organizational structure, right?
Okay.
Laid out pretty clearly in the handbook. They've got this three-tiered system.
Okay.
Camps, oases, and lodges.
Camps, oases, and lodges. Okay. I'm already intrigued.
Yeah.
So this three-tiered system, is it like levels of access or knowledge? How's that work?
Yeah, it's a kind of a progression. Think of it that way.
Okay.
Camps, they're like the entry point.
Okay.
Focusing on, the lower degrees of initiation, often structured kind of like study groups.
Okay. Makes sense.
Then you've got your oases, right?
Okay.
They administer initiations up to a certain level, require a deeper level of commitment.
So like a stepping stone.
Exactly.
Before you get to the real inner circle.
Exactly. The inner circle, that would be the lodges. They offer the highest degrees of initiation that are available locally.
Okay.
And they're led by, the most experienced members.
Makes sense.
What's interesting is that the handbook emphasizes you can actually belong to like multiple groups simultaneously.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you could be part of a camp, an oasis, and a lodge all at the same time.
Talk about commitment. Wow. So you've got this intricate system, this emphasis on progression. How does one even get into the O.T.O? I mean, is there like a secret handshake, a password?
I haven't found a secret handshake in here yet, but there is an application process. It's it's pretty demanding.
Okay, so spill the tea. What do you have to do to get in?
Well, first of all, you can't just like walk in off the street.
Okay.
You need sponsors, existing members who will essentially vouch for you, your character, your commitment to the OPO's principles, all that good stuff.
Okay, so it's not just a sign-up sheet online.
No. This is serious business. There are fees involved, waiting periods between the different degrees of initiation. For example, you're looking at 9 months in the first degree before you can even think about moving on to the second.
9 months? That's longer than some of the shows I've been binging lately. What's the reasoning behind that?
Commitment.
Yeah.
They want to make sure that this isn't something you just, dabble in.
Right.
You're gradually immersing yourself in their beliefs and practices over time.
So it's more of a marathon, not a sprint.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
And that dedication is definitely something they value, which you can also see in their leadership structure. The handbook goes into detail about the different councils that are within each tier. And it's a very hierarchical system, very structured.
So who's at the top? Like, who's really calling the shots in this whole pyramid?
Okay. So at the very top, you have the Grand Lodge.
Okay.
They're overseeing everything. And then they report to the O.T.O's international headquarters.
Wow. Okay.
Each council has its own specific responsibilities.
Yeah.
It's all about making sure that everything runs smoothly, I guess.
It's pretty fascinating, though, to see how seriously they take their structure and their organization. But it does beg the question, once you've gone through this whole intense application process, paid your dues, learned everything, what is life actually like as an O.T.O member?
Well, that's where things get really interesting.
Yeah.
Because the handbook also outlines a specific set of rules and responsibilities.
Okay.
Some are, I guess, what you would expect, and then some are, let's just say they're a little bit more surprising.
Ooh, okay. Like, what kind of surprises are we talking?
Well, like some rules are kind of what you'd expect, right? Like no illegal activities during, O.T.O gatherings.
Okay, makes sense.
So like firearms, drugs, those are strictly prohibited.
Right.
But then you get these guidelines about like not publicly displaying robes or performing rituals where, uninitiated people can see.
Okay.
They even specifically say no magical wars, and I quote that, No magical wars.
No magical wars. Now, that's not something you see every day. What does that even mean, like, practically speaking?
It's not entirely clear from the handbook, but
Okay.
I think it speaks to this desire to maintain a certain decorum, you know,
Right.
avoid any activities that could be um, misconstrued
Right.
or cause harm.
Makes sense.
And I think it's important to remember that this handbook is from 1996,
Right.
a time when, let's be honest, perceptions of groups like the O.T.O. were often
A little
a
skewed.
little skewed, yeah,
Yeah.
influenced by all those like sensationalized media portrayals, right?
Right. Right.
So these rules, it's almost like they're trying to kind of, uh, distance themselves from those stereotypes,
Sure.
emphasize the ethical and spiritual nature of their practices.
So it's about protecting their image, making sure that their activities are understood within the right context.
Exactly, yeah.
It's really interesting, this kind of tension between like maintaining these traditions but also adapting to the modern world, you know?
Yeah, and that tension is definitely evident in their guidelines about sharing information too. Like they're very clear about the need for discretion.
Okay.
Like you can't just go around revealing someone's a member
Yeah.
without their consent.
Right.
Even like discussing the degrees of initiation, that's subject to certain rules as well.
So no, like casual, hey, I leveled up announcements at the water cooler.
Not exactly, no. The idea is you only discuss your level of initiation with those who have attained, the same level or higher.
Okay.
It's about respecting the progression of knowledge within the order.
So like a need to know basis for spiritual seekers. It does make you wonder though, why so much secrecy?
I think it's
Yeah.
well, it's multifaceted, right?
Okay.
Like on a practical level, it protects the privacy of the members,
Sure.
prevents misunderstandings about what they're doing. I mean, a lot of spiritual groups have traditions that they consider, sacred,
Right.
private.
And they wouldn't want those like taken out of context or misrepresented.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then beyond that, there's also this element of like preserving the sanctity of their teachings,
Okay.
making sure that they're passed down respectfully, accurately, this idea of lineage, of tradition,
Right.
it seems to be very important to them.
And speaking of tradition, we have to talk about the limit calendar.
Yes.
Because you mentioned it earlier, and honestly, it's been like stuck in my head this whole time.
It's a fascinating thing.
Yeah.
And the handbook, it gets into it.
Okay.
Like it's based on these cycles of 22 years.
Mm-hmm.
And their year zero, as it were, starts on the spring equinox in 1904,
Okay.
which is, a pretty pivotal moment for their belief system because it marks the reception of a text called the Book of the Law.
Okay, so they've got their own calendar running parallel to our Gregorian calendar. What does that even mean for their, like, day-to-day life? Are they celebrating New Year's Eve in July?
Not quite. No, their holidays are tied to
Okay.
significant events in Islamic history. So, for example, August 12th, that's the feast for the first night of the Prophet and his bride, which commemorates the anniversary of Aleister Crowley's marriage to his first wife, Rose Kelly.
Okay, so Aleister Crowley, that's the prophet in this context. I've heard that name before, but I think I need a little more background on who he is and why he's important.
Sure. So Aleister Crowley was this really influential occultist writer, and he was really key in developing Thelema,
Okay.
which is the philosophical and religious system that underpins a lot of the O.T.O's beliefs and practices.
Okay.
And the Book of the Law, which he claimed to have received through, mystical means,
Right.
that's central to their teachings.
Okay, so this calendar, it's not just about like tracking time differently. It's about connecting with these really deep spiritual roots.
Exactly. Yeah, it's about honoring their lineage. And they even incorporate like astrological elements too,
Okay.
often including the positions of the sun and moon in the zodiac as like part of a formal thelemic date.
Wow, so it's like their own secret code almost, reflecting this deeper understanding of the cosmos and their place in it.
Yeah, you could say that.
It's fascinating. But, for all this talk about calendars and cosmic alignments, this handbook doesn't shy away from like more down-to-earth concerns either.
Right.
Like they get into like ethical conduct,
Yeah,
especially when it comes to like potentially harmful behavior.
absolutely. Yeah. And the handbook is like very clear that any form of non-consensual sexual conduct is,
Right.
completely prohibited.
Good.
They really emphasize consent, respect within the community, stating that no one should feel pressured or obligated to, engage in any unwanted sexual activity,
Right.
especially within the context of, initiations or rituals.
Right. And it's
Yeah.
good to see that addressed so explicitly, even in a document from 1996.
Yeah, I think it speaks to their commitment to creating a safe and respectful environment for all members.
For sure. And it also highlights this idea of accountability,
Yes.
which we see come up again when they talk about the role of sponsors in the application process.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
The sponsors, they're not just like signing off on their friend's application.
Right.
They've got real responsibilities here.
You do.
Like the handbook really emphasizes that sponsors have to know the applicant well.
Okay.
They have to be confident in their character, their commitment to the O.T.O's principles, and they're even held accountable for the actions of those they sponsor.
Wow. Talk about pressure. That's a big commitment.
It is. It speaks to the level of trust and responsibility that they value within the order. It's not just, blindly vouching for someone.
Right.
It's about making sure they're a good fit for the community and that they're going to uphold its values.
That makes sense. So once you're in, what kind of support is there? Do they give you a crash course in thelemic philosophy, or is there so you're a new O.T.O member starter pack?
I haven't seen a starter pack,
Okay.
but the handbook does mention these initiate study programs.
Mhm.
So think of it like kind of guided courses for each degree of initiation,
Okay.
designed to deepen members' understanding of the teachings, the practices, all of that.
So it's like a structured learning path guiding you through each stage of the journey.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
It ensures that new members aren't just, thrown into the deep end.
Right.
They're given the tools and the support that they need to navigate this, let's be honest, pretty complex world.
For sure. For sure.
And it also highlights this emphasis on continuous learning within the O.T.O, which makes sense given how deep and complex everything is, even just from what we've seen in this handbook.
Right. Exactly. And we've really only scratched the surface.
Exactly.
But it's clear that this is a group that values knowledge, tradition, personal growth. But it does still make you wonder, how do you actually live as an O.T.O member? How do you navigate all these beliefs and practices within the context of just your everyday life?
That's a question I'm sure a lot of people grapple with.
Right.
And while this handbook gives guidelines, it provides structure, it doesn't dictate every aspect of a member's life.
Right.
It's more about finding a balance, I think.
Finding a balance between the rituals and just your regular routine, the ancient wisdom in the modern world.
Exactly. And that balance is going to look different for everyone.
Right. It's really about how you make it your own, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we've talked about the structure of the O.T.O,
Right.
the commitment they expect, this whole calendar system. But with all this talk about rituals and tradition and everything, where's the line? Where's the line between being a member of the O.T.O and just, living your life?
I think that's a really interesting question. And it goes back to that idea of balance,
Right.
because this handbook, it doesn't come across as this is how you have to live your life. It's more about,
Mm-hmm.
here's a framework for you to,
Yeah.
explore spiritually, grow within the context of these teachings. But
Yeah.
it's not about, giving up everything and becoming a hermit in a cave.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. You're not ditching your job and your family and just holing up with these ancient texts,
Oh,
right?
Right. Unless, of course, that's
your thing.
that's your thing.
Oh,
Yeah.
right.
But I think the handbook recognizes that, that members are individuals, right?
Right.
Everyone's on their own path. Some people might be super involved in, their local O.T.O community. They're going to rituals, events, all of that.
Right.
Others might be way more solitary,
Right.
focusing on personal study, reflection, that kind of thing.
Right. Find what works for you.
Exactly.
But what I do find really interesting, though, is that even with this, emphasis on individual exploration, they also seem to have a very clear structure in place for when people disagree, when there are disputes.
Yeah.
We talked about the Grand Tribunal earlier, their system for handling these things.
Yes.
And I think it's worth digging into that a little bit more, because the handbook, it actually outlines a really specific process for addressing grievances.
Yeah.
And it's not just for major offenses or anything. It's really anything that kind of disrupts the harmony of the order.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's you break the rules. There's a system in place to deal with it.
So no passive aggressive notes left on the bulletin board, I guess.
I don't think that's going to fly here.
Okay.
No. It has to be a formal complaint.
Okay.
Submitted in writing, all the details, the whole 9 yards.
Okay, so very, very official. Why be so formal about it?
It seems to be about, maintaining order, fairness,
Okay.
addressing issues, head on.
Right.
Focus on resolution, accountability, even in, a community that's all about, spiritual growth.
Which, honestly, that's something I think a lot of groups could stand to learn from, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Because having a way to handle these disagreements, it can prevent those small issues from becoming,
Problems, yeah.
huge problems down the line. And
Yeah.
what I think is really interesting is that the handbook, it acknowledges that, like, people are complicated, you're
Yep.
going to have conflicts, even in a group where, like, theoretically everyone is striving for, some kind of spiritual enlightenment. There are still going to be disagreements.
Yeah. And you need a way to work through those.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So they're not pretending it's not going to happen. It's more like, okay, it's going to happen. Here's how we're going to deal with it.
Exactly. Let's try to do this constructively.
Right, exactly. Be constructive. And that, that emphasis on constructive dialogue, on finding that balance, again, between individual needs and the needs of the group as a whole, I think that's a really valuable takeaway from this whole deep dive.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we've gone pretty deep into this 1996 O.T.O handbook.
Yeah, we really have.
Secret rituals, or at least the rules around them.
Right? The rule
This
is...
whole calendar system, conflict resolution. Who knew that one document could be so revealing?
It just goes to show the power of curiosity.
Right.
And taking the time to really kind of, dig into something that's unfamiliar, uncover all those hidden layers.
It's fascinating. And you know what? I want to thank you, our listener, for sending this to us.
Yes, thank you.
Because it's been quite the journey. And we never know where curiosity is going to take us next, but
It's always an adventure.
it is always an adventure. There's always more to learn. There's always something else to uncover. So until next time,
Keep exploring.
keep exploring, keep asking those questions, and please keep those fascinating documents coming our way.